Ready to go. So our next speaker, Ryan, is the CEO and founder of Iron Fox Games, where he leads a team of talented game developers who partner with the world's best game companies to create and launch innovative and engaging games. Ryan has a BA in behavioral science and over 16 years of video game industry experience. Previously, he was the general manager of Kabam Acadia, where he founded the PEI location, and was the executive producer of Transformers Forged to Fight. He was also the director of live service at Electronic Arts, where he managed the launch and operations of Star Wars Rise to Power, and was the lead producer on The Simpsons Tapped Out. So everyone give a warm welcome to Ryan.
Make one adjustment to that bio is that Rise to Power never actually launched, so. And we all know how EA and Star Wars work out. So, hi, I'm Ryan, as you just heard my bio. My talk here is called Revive and Archive Adventures in Mobile Game Preservation, which could be a fun topic depending on who you are. So what's the mission of this is that we want to recover early smartphone games and make them playable to anyone. So what is the problem? Okay, so in our industry we're losing track of our history. We have friends that work at the Video Game History Foundation, and we talked to them a couple weeks ago, and we realized that apparently 87% of all games that were made before 2010 are now at risk of extinction. And they are specifically as an organization or trying to collect all the physical media. And the reason they chose 2010 was that was sort of the generation of when we moved away from shipping CDs and cartridges in stores to always downloading games. And so this number is actually way worse on the digital side. And most of our current, like I said, most of the current game preservation efforts are on physical goods, and digital preservation has like a lot of its own unique challenges. I can't go into my closet and dig out an iPhone 3 and 3GS and expect it to boot and expect the games to run and connect to the services that were written for it at the time. So, what are the more of the problems is that mobile games, they're becoming increasingly obsolete. Games which were born digital are significantly harder to preserve. There's huge compatibility issues with evolving firmware, software, hardware, like I mentioned, dependent services. For example, I don't know if anybody knows what OpenFaint is, but back in the most of the games connected to it. OpenFaint doesn't even exist as a platform anymore. They went on to do Discord, so they were very successful people, but their old versions of things don't work anymore. Versioning over time means the game itself is harder to define. In a world of live operations, when you're launching a new version of your game every, let's say 10, 12, 14 days, what version of the game is actually the version that you should actually be preserving. So why would we want to preserve all this stuff? Well, we're all gamers in this room. I believe they're historically significant. You go up to any mom or anybody from any generation, they're going to know what Pac-Man is, they're going to go know what Mario is. We think that in an age when games are now fast disposable, if you see the hyper-casual market that happened, games are being made, developed, shipped, turned off all within 4 weeks. And we want to make sure that future generations can play these games. So why do we care? Well, I owe my career to these games. I don't know how many of these icons you can actually identify. I'll be very impressed if you can get them all. But I started in the video game industry in 2008 when the iPhone had just launched in the United States. It wasn't available in Canada. I walked into a QA role interview and I had an iPod Touch in my hand, and the most amazing thing was I was like, look, it can go turn sideways. And it was like, it blew my mind. And I was like, this thing is going to change how we game. And sure enough, I ended up being able to work on some of the earliest games in the industry, like Super Monkey Ball, Topple, Maze Finger, Wii Rule, and Words with Friends, and Mega Jump, which I'll get onto in a second. So what is the state of preservation? Well, we think this is going to be a community effort. We are not going to be able to do this on our own. There's a lot of institutions that you can read them there. A couple we've reached out to is the Strong Museum of Play. I would write that down, and if you're ever I think it's in Buffalo, it might be in Rochester, New York, they have a 50,000 square foot campus of all types of games toys, and we are talking and working with them. It's all funded by an heiress who was really passionate about that, and they're a huge proponent of this and been helping us a lot. There's the National Video Game Museum, the Video Game History Foundation, who we talked about, who are friends of ours based out of Emeryville. There's some professional bodies like the Game Preservation Network, Digital Games Research Association, the IGDA, and the like. So it's a huge community effort to do this. Secondly, it's like a passion project for us. We will believe in remote accessible to source code for academic study. We want to make sure that archiving, these early test flight builds are possible. If you follow the gaming news, about, I think it was 6 months ago, there was something called the Terra leak, where a whole bunch of early test flight builds were leaked onto the internet. And then there's some like emulation of older systems, QME for iOS and Touch HLE, which are available open source emulators for early mobile developers. And you can go on to I think it's HLE.com, and see an early prototype of an emulator running early iOS software. And thirdly, you got to build preservation in mind. So make sure, like, if you're developing something right now and you want to make sure it's available later, you want to back up your code, you want to archive your documentation, you want to take photos, make sure those concepts and processes all handled, and allow for future people, you got to think of the problems of tomorrow, that they'll be able to understand your game in context. Okay, we get it. History is important. But how do we drive more interest? Not everybody wants to play a 2010 version of Super Monkey Ball. But we realize that there's a new audience. And this is sort of the genesis of where we ended up coming up with some of these ideas. One of our major partners, Poki.com, the three biggest games on their website right now are Subway Surfers, Temple Run, and Crossy Road. All games that were built from 2010 to 2012, had a huge audience, and you see people like Apple Arcade, they brought back Cut the Rope 3, Ridiculous Fishing, Jetpack Joyride, Tiny Wings, so all these early 2010, 2011 iPhone hits. So, my kids are 13 and 10, and these games are now older than them, and so, it kind of makes me feel like a very old person at times. And that they're like finding these games like I found, Super Mario Brothers when I was 10. But can we do something to make this preservation commercially viable? Because most people aren't going to be throwing money at preserving old games that aren't going to make money. So how do we fund the archival efforts with some of this revenue? Well, there's challenges before you even get to that. There's copyright and licensing issues. There's finding the developers and their materials. There's a research and development that needs to go into this. There's really thin margins on this commercially. Like if I go back to Poki, like their main source of revenue is ad plays. So like while they have a huge audience of 65 million monthly active users, they're still like only operating on like a ad revenue model. And so like there's not a lot of money there. I'll give you a quick story. This week I reached out to a developer who was actually a maritime developer who had a huge hit called League of Evil. And he's like, look, that's a game I made 10 years ago with somebody in another country. I haven't talked to that guy in 7 years. The amount of like digging and work you have to do just to even find the source code, find the person, it's a significant undertaking. But why do we want to try this? Well, we think, good games reach billions of people. The games and their development process deserve to be studied for future people. There could be new revenue streams that are created from these old products. And it's kind of, in my opinion, our responsibility. So, that's sort of the issue in a nutshell. But what have Iron Fox done? Well, what you guys get to find out today that we've actually secured a partnership with Half Brick Plus. If you know Half Brick, they did Fruit Ninja, Jetpack Joyride, one of I would say the premier developer. They're launching a new platform this summer. You can go download the app right now, it's free. It's called Half Brick Plus, and it's going to be a subscription platform that allows you to download 30, 40, 50 older games. We are working with them and a company in Toronto called Get Set, who are the original developers of Mega Jump, to bring back Mega Jump, which is a game that got 90 million downloads but has been dead for 7 years, to relaunch it this summer. And that's not been publicly announced yet. We just signed the deal on Thursday, so they gave me permission to say that. Thanks. We first did this talk in January, and and this wasn't true. So it was great to I finally have an update to all this works with. And we want to forge new partnerships with people who understand the digital preservation space better. So those are the people like the Strong Museum and the Video Game History Museum. And then the hardest part of all this is establishing an R&D pipeline. So while we're digging up GetSet's Mega Jump, there was 4 versions of Mega Jump: Mega Jump 1, 2, Run, and Mega Jump Infinity. Then there was, who's the mic? Yeah. Oh, all right, I'll just be loud. And one was built in Unity, one was built in C#, one didn't work in Android, and now we're having to take the Unity version because that's the one that's going to future-proof it, but then find a way to export all the low levels from the first version, put it into the Unity version, and then modernize the UI, make sure it fixes on 19 different screen resolutions now. You can imagine it's a hack job, and trying to make sure that we preserve this for the future is really important for us. So we are looking for games. We've got one game on one platform. There's, we believe, hundreds more of these. But we had to narrow down our criteria because there's thousands of games going up in the App Store every day. And we want to make this is the criteria of the games we're looking for. IP that's still with the original creators. Created between 2008 and 2013, preferably before free to play, because that makes it a lot easier. It hit the top 100 at one point, and the game's been dormant for some period of time. So if you want to be involved, we've launched a website, retromobilegames.com. And if you're an IP holder, you're a publisher, you're an archivist, maybe you're just a fan, you want to help us in this endeavor, just go to that website. You can drop us your email address, and we'd love to talk to you. That's it. Sean, in the hat. Nice hat, by the way.
Thank you. Top 100 in what respect, Ryan?
At the time, we were going with just straight download numbers, because ratings websites. If you go top 100 games from 2010, might be an IGN article that was written and still up on the internet somehow, or because the public data at the time wasn't really available or the public. It was mostly either by ratings or just published they would just take the top 100 download lists. It's a fuzzy top 100. John.
Other John.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe a compound question.
Sure.
Where do you see the role of cloud in the preservation of games, and also how do you see that being used in accessing new emerging markets like, say, Africa or the Middle East?
So, without getting too soapboxy, my opinion is that, at least as a mobile game developer, everything is going to the web. We're going back to the web really quickly. So I will define cloud as accessible gaming from any device anywhere. Is that okay?
Yeah,
definition?
exactly that.
Yeah. Downloading and running games on, and we'll give XL a plug here. They're helping people do this. Maybe it's a planted question.
It might have been a planted question.
Is where everything's going to go, right? People are tired of Apple and Google's stores. I don't want to give 30% of my money to them anymore. There is large emerging markets. One of our potential partners that we're talking to, without saying too much, is Google. They're moving into instant games. I don't know if you've been on YouTube lately. They're setting it up where devices are going to be mostly, well, it's not going to matter. You're going to be able to pick up your game and play it no matter where you want, and it's going to play a huge role. And I think the emerging market situation are going to be ripe for these kind of games because they were fun. It was fun to load up a Mega Jump and see how high you could get as a quick game snack kind of thing. And those devices are going to be lower tier, probably closer to something that's mid-2015s, and so that they're going to be a huge piece of that pie, I think, for sure.
Hi, I'm also in the VGHF, the Discord group. I've been watching their efforts with the Copyright Office in the U.S. and Laurie, I'm sure you've seen all that too.
Yeah.
Do you see challenges like that in Canada specifically that we might have to deal with here?
We haven't gone to that level yet because mostly our first toe dipping into this has been through people who already own the copyright and are the IP holders. that's why we're going to them first, because I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
And so making sure we get agreements with those folks in place, first signed, was like a huge hurdle for us on the first go around. And now we have a template. But then once you start publishing internationally, you've got to make sure that you have those rights secured. And you're not, every time we're going to deal with one of these things, it's got to be a situation where it's all like above legal, because I don't have funds to fight.
No,
lawyers
yeah,
right
the
now, so,
lawyers, yeah.
no.
So do you have any plans to make PC ports and the console ports of these games? Because not everyone is into like playing on a touchscreen.
Yeah, the console port, unless there's a publisher out there that's writing checks for these things, is probably never going to happen. And if you've noticed the VC investment industry right now on the gaming side, nobody's writing checks right now for anything. But on the Steam side of things, or PC or Epic, that's a little easier, depending on how we can execute the code. Where we'll likely go first is web. We're likely going to, one of the next steps we're going to do with Mega Jump is we're going to take the Unity version of the game and then port it to the web, and then find web partners that can get it up and play it on a PC, desktop, or whatever. So yeah, that's the easiest path for us. All the way in the back there?
Do you think like remastered games are like helping, or like?
I mean, remastered games are in a great place. They don't really fit into the initiative on our, because we picked mobile because we've been doing mobile for 15 years right now. But on the remastered side, there is definitely a huge push to like get nostalgia back into people's minds of like, what was I playing when Knights of the Old Republic came out? And then maybe I don't think those are ever bad, and they sell really well too. So they're pretty low risk for some people.
Where do you land in terms of like emulation versus porting? Like, is it still the original game? If you're emulating it, are you trying to like exactly recreate the experience of the original game as you're bringing it forward, or is it can be adapted?
Yeah, that's a good question on the adaption side. So something we're gonna have to do with the Mega Jump relaunch is we're not relaunching it one for one. Like, there was some quality of life improvements that came alive. They integrated like some free-to-play mechanics, like $1.99 for a skin, or like watch an ad for this. And we're ripping those out for our integration with Halfbrick Plus. So we're not going to be one for one, but we're trying to recreate the feeling and the nostalgia with the partner. And so it's a very gray thing. In terms of emulation, my own, not business side of it is like, emulation is pretty much the only thing keeping most of these games alive. Like most of the big publishers, Nintendo is probably the most notorious for this, where they have this giant catalog and don't let anybody have access to it. So emulators are the only way to keep those older games alive. But from a commercial perspective, like, we're making sure we have everything crossed, and we're not going to promote the emulation of somebody else's game through our means, but we want to make sure. But I'm happy that stuff exists.
You again.
Yeah.
So you probably saw Frank say the whole thing about make a box
Yeah.
in his recent speech. Like, do you have any advice to developers about like how do you, for the future, things you could do to help prevent this kind of situation or make it easier for people to do this in the future, perhaps?
Yeah, a lot of that has to be like, foresight. I mean,
Yeah.
Frank's make a box that he's referring to, what I think, I didn't hear it specifically, but to extrapolate is like, make a physical box of your
just
GDD
record
and
and
your
store
and the
things, yeah.
history. So, put it probably in a storage place with a key that doesn't, won't get destroyed, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I know with Frank's the head guy at the Video Game History Foundation, and his work is probably the most pioneering of anybody. They have access to like source code dumps and like cartridges of like games that were never released on consoles that never actually shipped. Like, it's quite insane the amount of stuff they have there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, just do it at the beginning, not when you're trying to do it 5 or 6 years later after it's shipped. Yeah.
So I guess for developers making games now, a lot of stuff is more digital, like GDDs, right?
Yeah.
So do you still recommend like making physical copies, or is there like some sort of protocol that you can follow for more digital, I guess, design tools?
Yeah, we as a developer group, we use something called Clipclick. We don't actually print any of our stuff. Sean probably thinks we should. Should we? I don't know.
I was just showing my
Yeah, that's his GDD right there. So, I don't really have any recommendations other than like try to do what you think's best. Maybe not print every iteration of every single GDD you wrote, but maybe the one that's most complete in the moment. And if anybody's ever gone through GDD, it's only as good as it was like 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
And then in 6 months it's not going to be relevant at all. But it's always good to have that historical, at least for your own preservation mind, is like, hey, this is something I did. You can, if the collab goes down and you forget your, Gmail password, you'll always have it, right?
Happens a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone. I'm around to talk anytime. One more thing. We have a game launching on Tuesday. Can I take one more second? Oh shoot. What's the password? My phone's not.
Lord knows they're all different.
You can use my AX. That's my home. Alex.
Oh.
Good to know. Good to know.
Wow. Cool.
Sorry. Yeah, Alex.
Capitals A, maybe? No one will guess that.
Oh, sorry, Alex. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, Alex.
See how good your internet is. Let's hope the server's up. Hey, it is. All right. Okay, so this is our game. We're launching this on Poki.com on Tuesday. It's really meant as a multiplayer, real-time multiplayer. It's kind of boring when you're by yourself, since you're supposed to be chasing somebody. Yeah, so it's obtag.gg. We're going worldwide on Tuesday on Poki.com. Our other game there does 30,000 DAU roughly, so we're hoping this will be a big hit for us. Thanks.